Asbestos, a Gold Coast #1 asbestos removal company. Let's talk about floods. So we first got involved in floods and asbestos in the floods. So we first got involved in our first flood was 2011, the big floods in Queensland that went through southeast Queensland. Now, during that time, I think we stripped out about 50 houses up in that Ipswich area. Since then, there's been a few little ones. There was 2017, there was one in Mooloolaba, and Northern Rivers got affected a little bit. But we just finished 6 months down in Lismore, Casino, Ballina, where else did we go? Mooloolaba, Mullumbimby, all through that area of town. Now, what people don't understand is when you have a flood, that water comes in and that water goes out. Now, that water brings all sorts of microbes, all sorts of nasties. And that stuff stays. It sticks into the frame, it gets in between the walls. So what you have to do is, those walls have to be exposed so they can be treated, dried out, and there's a whole process that goes through. Now, one of the things, as we all know, is these houses are lined with asbestos. So if your house gets flooded and it's lined with asbestos, and even this much water through your house will do some major damage because you'll still have to have all your walls stripped out to the join, which is about that high, even if it's gyprock or even if it's timber. And you will still have to have, and if it's asbestos, it'll go all the way to the ceiling because there's no way, because asbestos is a banned building product and there's no safe way to join to it or affix to it. So the process is it gets rid of. Now, we've seen a lot of stuff through these latest floods. It's just incredible, some of the things that we were exposed to. Just so many houses, the main street of Lismore was under 5 metres of water. And to put that into context, that meant that the river had to rise 16 metres. It's a lot of water. I can imagine your local town being totally flooded. The total CBD of Lismore was flooded. So we were tasked with, we were working for a couple of insurance bills, and we were tasked with going in these houses, getting the asbestos out so that the rebuilding could start again. Now, we did some stuff. We did a lot of houses. We did a couple of schools, some commercial buildings. It's pretty much all the same. But the most important thing was understanding how we were going to transport it and move it around. Because in that Northern Rivers area, all of the tips got flooded and all of the tips were closed to asbestos. And it took them probably about 2 months before they sorted themselves out. So we had to transport it to Queensland. Now, in New South Wales, they don't have transport licenses for asbestos. They have a system where they track. It's an amazing system where they have a waste locate system, and they use GPS tracking. So you log it into their system, and then when you pick it up, you hit on your phone, pick up, and they'll track you to the tip, and then you hit deliver, and that's done. When we're in Queensland, that we have waste transport documents that we have to fill out that have to be submitted. But here's the trick. At the start of the floods, even down in New South Wales, there was nowhere in that area to transport it. So the waste had to be transported from New South Wales to Queensland. And now you're taking asbestos cross borders. So what we had to do is we had to apply for a transport number. I can't remember what it's called. We had to submit paperwork to say to Queensland, say, hey, we want to bring this amount of asbestos from this destination to this tip. So this paperwork had to go from, we had to notify New South Wales that we were doing the job. We had to notify New South Wales that we were going to applying for a transport number, so that we could take that into Queensland. And then the Queensland EPA had to approve the number, and it was just like this massive process. So you can see how, what I'm trying to build the picture is that the asbestos, the removal of asbestos is heavily regulated as the transport of asbestos. I just thought that might be interesting. You can't just chuck it in the ute and just take it anywhere. Only certain facilities will take asbestos waste, and usually you would want to ring that facility and say, hey, this is what I've got, this is how I'm going to package it, this is how we're going to transport it, this is what I want to do. Will that work for you? Some places will receive small packages. Some of them we use tipper trucks and tipper trailers because of the volumes that we transport. I think out of Lismore we took a couple of thousand tonnes of asbestos out of Lismore. Now, you can't do that in small packages. That has to be tipped. Some of these places won't let you tip. Some of these places have like a burial, where you've got to tell them how big your package is, organise it, and they dig a hole, and then it supervises it goes in. All these are fine, and they have different rates for all this stuff. So the transport of asbestos is not for amateurs. You really want to be a professional, and you need to know what's going on. So that's just an insight into our industry and the way that asbestos is transported around. It's not just done willy-nilly. Like I said before, in the Act, it tells us how it's got to be transported, how it's got to be transported safely. You've got to have special insurances, you've got to have special licenses, you've got to have access to that waste locate system, which you can't unless you've got an asbestos removal license in New South Wales. So that's it for today.